Yeah, so it reminded me of that Srila Maharaj mentions it when he was first visiting the Gaudiya Math, and and there was that occasion where one brahmachari was suspicious of him. Srila Maharaj hadn't yet joined the Gaudiya Math, and just would very quietly come and listen, right, to Srila Saraswati Thakur's lectures. And he was a very acute, sharp listener, and to the point where some of the members thought he was a spy. And um, and so then one of them put some check on him at one point. Srila Sridharaj tried to go up to some upper room, and and that this one brahmachari told him, "Oh no, you can't just go up like that. You know, you have to get permission first." And and so kind of brushed him aside. And Srila Sridharaj was, naturally, hurt by that, and and he left at that time. And but then he thought to himself, you know, if there's something valuable here, then even if they beat me with a broomstick, I should still come, right? And on the other hand, if there's nothing of value here, but they put me on a throne, I should not come, right? And so he resolved that he would continue to go. And then he also remembered at that time this this one incident. Suvasini Didi's joined us. She might remember better than me. And welcome also to Krishna Jani Didi. He's just joined too. This occasion, I think it was Shukadev Goswami. He was trying to meet with King Janaka. And
Yes.
that's right, huh? And
Yeah.
but in order to do so, he had to pass through 7 gates, and he had to spend 7 days at each gate, right? So it was, I'm telling them, Dee, you can understand because you've been there. I visited the ISKCON Bangalore temple, and it's so elaborate to get inside. So I was, yeah, so many things. First there's security, then there's a place for your bags, then there's a place for your shoes, and there's this whole like winding thing. And then you think, okay, and then there's a bridge, and then you finally think you're gonna get to the temple. And you also pass by a few smaller temples before you get to the main temple. And then you finally get to the main temple where they have, Radha, Krishna Chandra, Gornitai, Krishna Balaram, and you finally think you're there. And then there are these 108 steps, and you're supposed to chant the Maha Mantra on each step. And there's a recording of Srila Prabhupada playing, and you're supposed to like wait on each step, chant the Maha Mantra, Srila Prabhupada, then go forward to the next step. So it's like this whole thing, you know. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I would just like to go to the temple, And there was also a bit of a crowd. And so, you can't just go ahead, So I'm very patiently and just waiting to go. And I was feeling a little like, oh, I would like to just go to the temple, Why do I have to do this? And then I remembered that pastime. Dandavat Sadhvi, welcome. Dandavat Ramananda Prabhu. And I remember that pastime with King with Shukadev and Janaka, and I thought, yes, we're going to see the Lord, we should prepare ourselves, we should appreciate how precious this opportunity is. It's not a light thing. It is not a small thing, we are going to see the Lord, then we have to prepare our minds for that. And so I adjusted myself like that. And and then finally I, reached the temple, and actually it was quite extraordinary. I mean, who am I to say, but the deities were so effulgent, actually, and so beautiful, so effulgent. And I felt very, very blessed to be able to have their darshan. And I had one thought, I've been thinking about since then, that we could think of our life in this way, that there are moments when we have darshan, and then there's everything else. Right? Those moments, rare moments, right? There may only be a few in our lives, right? When we have darshan, whether it's in the Lord's presence or from an exalted Vaishnava, Paramahamsa Vaishnava, it's even more rare. You know, those are like the moments when you feel a touch of reality, right? Very rare moments. And then you feel like, oh, this is why I'm here, and this is everything, and this is what life is really about. So we have those very rare moments, and then there's everything else in our life, right? And then the rest of our lives, our days, we're just waiting for those moments, living in the plane of our body, right? As Mahaprabhu says, living like insects, right? Without feeling love, without feeling divine love for the Lord. We're just living like insects, living in the cage of this body and mind and senses. And what is that, experiencing these senses of sight, touch, taste, smell, and being captured by these senses, being pulled in different directions, right? The mental plane, the ego plane, the body plane, the sensory plane, all these things, right? They're capturing us, pulling us. And it's all playing with the shadows, right? It's all playing with the unreal. But then there are those rare and precious moments in our lives when we feel some touch, maybe a few seconds, maybe a few moments. If we're very fortunate, maybe a few hours. And then we feel the touch of this higher subjective plane, right? We are living in this physical objective plane, a physical experience, right? Bur, that is the name in the geography of the Vedic world. This plane that we're in is known as Bur Loka, the plane of physical experience. So we are here on the outside, right, in this plane of physical experience. But we are very fortunate when we have those moments where there's some touch from that higher subjective plane, descends from above and touches us and withdraws, right? According to its own sweet will, right? That is the nature of the adhokshaja plane, right? It is not, it is not, it is rather, it is independent of the plane of our senses, right? It is not within the jurisdiction of our senses. And Gurudev, he would quote one line, I'm sure Suvasini can remember it, giving like a breakdown of that word, adhokshaja, but how it translates is as that which descends from above, comes down and knocks down our senses, knocks down our experience of the sensory world, right? But then because we're not established in that plane yet, then it will ultimately withdraw and we're left helpless. And there's a place in the Golden Volcano of Divine Love, so nice and very helpful, where Srila Sridhar Maharaj is speaking about the 5 different planes of existence and how there's the physical plane, there's the mental plane, there's the soul plane, then there's adhokshaja, the divinity, and then beyond that is a prakrita, right, the highest plane that appears ordinary but is not. That is Krishna's abode, Vrindavan. But speaking about the adhokshaja plane, Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he mentions there how we can cry, we can pray, but it's not subject to our whim, right? Not subject to our desire. We have something in the chat here. What about our dream world? From Gangalila. I would say that's part of the mental plane. I cannot actually remember the exact breakdown. I can look it up. It's in, but I would say that, I mean, based on what I've heard from our gurus, the dreams are the mental plane. But of course, there may be some rare occasion where some higher revelation comes, right? But that will be a rare thing, and we would want some confirmation that that is actually what it was, you know? I'm just looking up because it's actually so nice. Here it is. I'm just opening up Golden Volcano. It's in the section, The Tragedy of Separation at the end. Yeah, I mean, there are places where Srinivas, he's been asked, you know, like about, you know, dreams, like for example, having dreams of their guru giving their some instruction. And Srinivas, he clearly said, you know, that may be so, but it's also very possible it is a mental plane. But we've also heard that karma can be lived out in dreams also. Okay, I've come to, it's quite spread out, this description. Um, hmm. Yeah, I don't know if I can find it so easily. It's quite nice. It's actually something that it's an explanation that Srila Gurudev liked very much, you know. And, there's a place actually where Srila Sridhar he's speaking about how Gurudev once gave a, I think it was when he visited his old school, um, Putsuri, I think, in Bamampar, and and he visited his old school like for the first time after so many years, right? You know, Gurudev was born in this small village, and you know, then he went and joined the Math as a teenager, and so many years later he came back to visit, and and he visited his old school, and there were some, I think, some teachers in the school, they wanted to test him, like, oh, because I think Gurudev gave some lecture or something like that, and then they wanted to really test him, and they like, oh, is he just like a parrot, just parroting these things that he's learned, that he's heard? He doesn't really understand it. So then they put some tough questions to him, and Gurudev answered very brilliantly, and he spoke about these different stages of knowledge. And there's a talk where Srila Marsh is telling this, like very proudly, like telling of this incident of Srila Gurudev. Here it is. Right, so this is this section in Golden Volcano after Mahaprabhu takes sannyas, and he's like running, he's trying to go to Vrindavan, right? And he's running everywhere. Maybe I'll do a screen share. Um, Here we go. Okay, so let's move this out the way. Right, so it's this section in Golden Volcano. Srila Maharaj is describing Mahaprabhu's sannyas, and after taking sannyas, he's running. He's trying to go to Vrindavan, but he can't make it to Vrindavan, right? And partly because of the tricks of Nityananda Prabhu, but also Srila Maharaj, he gives his explanation that Mahaprabhu was also demonstrating that Vrindavan is not just a place, right? But Vrindavan is a plane of consciousness. It's not a geographical location on the map. And so Mahaprabhu's demonstrating this, running everywhere, because he's always in Vrindavan, right? And then when he meets Advaita Prabhu, Advaita tells him, you must be joking. Wherever you are, that is Vrindavan. And so then from that, Srila Sridhar segues into this explanation. Vrindavan, the highest plane of divinity, is a stage of consciousness. Above the plane of awe and reverence found in Vaikuntha is Vrindavan, the land of simplicity and divine love. The peculiarity of the inhabitants of that highest plane of consciousness that they do not feel they are in Vrindavan. It is a prakrita, supermundane. So this is what Srila Sridhar Maharaj later explains as the fifth stage of knowledge, a prakrita, appearing ordinary, but not so. Knowledge has been classified under 5 headings. The lowest is knowledge acquired through one's own sense experience, pratyaksha, what we have experienced through our senses. That is the first stage. The next higher stage is knowledge we have not experienced with our own senses, but have gathered from the experience of others, paroksha. Just as the scientists have their experience and we have gathered some knowledge from their inventions and discoveries. So what we've experienced from our own senses and what we've gathered from the experiences of others' senses. The third stage is above the stage of human experience, aparoksha. It is something like deep sleep. When we awaken, we say, I slept very happily. I slept a very good, sound sleep. But when in deep, dreamless sleep, we have no consciousness of that state. When we return from a deep, dreamless sleep, we express some awareness of that experience, but it is hazy. A paroksha is a sort of hazy experience, which is indistinct, where the subject and material object come together, and the material object vanishes in the subject. Shankaracharya, the great proponent of impersonalism, explains the gradation of consciousness up to this point. On the other hand, the great devotee scholar Ramanujacharya, as well as other Vaishnavacharyas, are of the opinion that there is a fourth stage beyond this. That plane is called adhokshaja, transcendental, or that which exists beyond the scope of the senses, whether gross or subtle. You know, Suvasniti, I've never quite understood this aparoksha. It's something like touching on the soul plane, would you say? The individual soul? It's a little hazy to me. Can you explain it?
Not so much in the, Gurudev also talks about it in the revealed truth, right? In this, all these 5 stages. It's,
Okay.
yeah, he also explains this. It's a something, it's just not like, some touch from, higher, some experience, but it is not so clear. I think, yeah.
Some hazy experience of spirit, perhaps.
Yes.
Something like that.
Yeah. We can also look into the revealed truth. Maybe it is Gurudev talks about it in detail about this also here somewhere.
Okay. Okay, well, maybe we'll.
Yeah, maybe if I find it, I will let you know.
Okay, yeah. Now I've lost my Zoom screen. Oh no, my computer seems to have frozen. Oh dear. What can you see me? Can you see the screen?
Yes, we
Yeah,
can
we
see.
can
Yeah.
see you. We can hear. Yeah.
You can, okay. Oh, my computer's frozen now. Oh dear.
But we can.
What kind
Yeah.
of computer you have?
Sorry, what did you say, Prabhu?
What kind of computer you have? Mac or PC?
Okay, it's back. It's back. Okay. Okay, it's back. No, it's a Windows machine. But okay, we're back. So then coming to the fourth stage, that plane is called a Hokshaja, or that which exists beyond the scope of the senses, whether gross or subtle. It is a plane that we can experience only when, by its sweet will, it comes down to our gross plane of understanding. So this is what we were speaking about, right? Those rare moments when we feel some touch of divinity. It comes down by its own will in grace, right? It is mercy, it is grace. It comes down to, and this is also, we can also remember, right? At this time, that explanation Srila Maharaj gave, right? When he was challenged about, how can the finite know anything about the infinite? And Srila Maharaj said, yes, you're right. The finite cannot know the infinite. However, if the infinite is truly infinite, it will have some way of making itself known to the finite, right? That is within the scope of his infinite capacity, right? So this is what that is, right? The touch of the Adhokshaja plane, when that plane out of mercy comes down to reveal itself to us, give us some touch of that higher existence, right? So this is Adhokshaja. By its sweet will, it is a plane that we can experience only when, by its sweet will, it comes down to our gross plane of understanding. If it withdraws, we are helpless. We cannot find it. We cannot say that the absolute truth is under the control of our knowledge, right? So this is the tricky part, right? And this is the premise of our whole culture of surrender and devotion, right? That we cannot control that, right? We cannot hold that within our fist. It's not something we can call upon whensoever we have the whim, right? We can't order it on Amazon, right? We can't order it with the food delivery. We can only invite that and wait for that helplessly, right? We can only keep that space open to receive that whensoever it may or may not feel the inspiration to come down to us, right? So it is a tricky thing. We're culturing helplessness in a sense. We're culturing a positive helplessness. So as I was saying before, right, in a way you could really say that our lives just consist of these two things. When we have that darshan, right, when we feel that touch, and everything else when we don't, when we're praying for that, right? And what's interesting is that, like, this is actually something that is consistent at every stage. This type of culture, the culture of a positive helplessness, it's not just something at our level, but even at the highest level, the highest devotees, they are also culture, they're also living in this way, right? Of course, in their case, it's all happening on a fully pure divine platform, whereas in our case, we're still struggling with the material energy. But think about it, right? The residents of Vrindavan, how do they spend like 90% of their lives waiting for Krishna? They're waiting for Krishna. We could ultimately bring this to in its highest expression, vipralamba, right? Separation in its highest expression, living in separation. So it is really, if you think about it, it's an extraordinary thing, right? You know, like when we hear about Krishna Lila, we tend to think more about, you know, Krishna being with his devotees. But if you actually like do a little mathematics, like Krishna left Vrindavan when he's around 15 years old and he doesn't come back. And they only meet him once after that, like over 100 years later in Kurukshetra. It's quite an extraordinary thing. That's Krishna consciousness. Like that's what's being put before us, right? We hear of this occasion when one gentleman, he challenged Srila Sridhar Maharaj, like Srila Sridhar Maharaj was preaching and collecting and in some city, and there was this gentleman who said, you know, I've heard about this Chaitanya, like how he lived in this painful state of separation, right? And sometimes blood oozing from his pores and all these different strange symptoms. Not a pretty picture, right? Not your cute little Krishna cartoon. What is it called? Little Krishna, right? It's very popular with the children. It's not like that, right? So that gentleman, he challenged Srila Sridhar is like, how can you present this as the highest conception? And of course, Srila Sridhar Maharaj explained, right, that is an external understanding, right? Baye visha jwala hoy, bitare anandamoy, Krishna prem adbhuchari. This is the explanation given by Kaviraj Goswami in Chaitanya Charitamrita. That externally it looks terrible, looks like you're suffering from the poison of a snake bite, but internally one is tasting the sweetest nectar, right? So that, of course, we cannot understand such things, but that gives us some type of context, right? Some type of reference point, some framework to understand this in some remote way. So yes, we are at every stage, we're waiting, right? We're waiting for that drop of mercy. And we can also think of the chatak bird, right? The Virachaya Mayidandam Dina Bandhu Dayamba Rupa Goswami's beautiful verse, right? That the chatak bird is always waiting for that pure, sweet, fresh rainwater. Will never take one drop from the ground. So we're living like that, trying to live like that. And sometimes we get some drops of that rainwater and we're elevated beyond our human condition for a moment, momentarily. And then the drops are withdrawn. We're back in our human state. But what do? We're still waiting, right? That's the life. That's the life that we're trying to lead, right? We are hankering and aspiring for those drops of nectar. So let's go on, read a little more here. So Srila Sridhar Maharaj is speaking about the Adhokshaja plane. By its sweet will, it may come down and we may experience that higher plane, but if it withdraws, we are quite helpless. We can do nothing. We may cry or we may pray, but we can't enter there forcibly by dint of our own power. This is the fourth plane of consciousness, and it is grand, all-powerful, and awe-inspiring. Only if it reveals itself to us can we have some experience of that plane known as Vaikuntha, the unlimited spiritual region of awe and power. That is the Adhokshaja plane. So there is pratyaksha, direct experience through sense perception, then paroksha, learning through the experience of others, and aparoksha, the negative plane of indistinct consciousness, and then the fourth dimension, Adhokshaja. Suvasniji, you look like you found that reference.
No, I haven't actually. I tried, but I couldn't find it yet. Maybe,
Okay, no
second.
problem.
Yeah.
No problem. We are underground. Real knowledge is above. And that's the thing, right? That when we get those touches of the upper world, that's the realization that comes, right? That all our other sensory experience, it's all minus, right? Or underground, as Srila Sridhar Maharaj is saying here, but it's almost like you're underwater and you know, like the world you want to be in is above, right? You get some perspective on that, right? So we are underground. Real knowledge is above on the surface, beyond our experience. If we can pierce through the thick coverings walling up our experience, we can come in connection with another plane of consciousness. That is Adhokshaja. Oh, this is the quotation I was thinking of. Adakritam indriyajam jnanam. Adhokshaja means the superior knowledge which can force down our knowledge of the experience of this world. That transcendental, supermental knowledge is the fourth stage of knowledge. That plane is different in every way. It is not similar to this world. So generally, the Vaishnava acharyas, they've described reality up to this point, right? However, through Srimad Bhagavatam and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we come to know that there is a fifth stage of knowledge, which is very similar to this mundane world, yet it is not mundane. It is called a Prakrita. That is Goloka, the full-fledged theistic conception, which is only found in Krishna's domain. Central knowledge of the Absolute must have a connection with even the lowest level of mundane creation. It must be able to harmonize the worst portion of the illusory world. This is known as a prakrita, supermundane. To enter that highest realm is possible only through divine love. Everything can be compensated only through love. So, the residents of Vrindavan think themselves ordinary. This is Jnana Shunya Bhakti. Divine love which is free from any calculation and does not consider even the opulence and power of the Lord. It is the special art of Yogamaya that those holding the highest position think themselves very insignificant. Love removes the difference of great and small, high and low. Vrindavan is such a plane of existence. There we find devotion free from any trace of calculation. Even the residents of Vrindavan may not know their own exalted position. This is one of my all-time favorite quotes. They are not conscious of their own exalted position. A king, when he is not very conscious of his power, thinks of himself as an ordinary person. It is something like that. Someone may be a great doctor, but through affection, he may do the work of a nurse for his patient. Out of his love and affection for the patient, he may come down to do such work, but still he is great. This is the beautiful nature of Vrindavan life. It is great without the attitude, the air of bigness. Although they are really great, they appear to be simple. Power, this is such a powerful line. power dressed in affection and love, couched in humility. That is Vrindavan, and that is also Navadvip. Srimad Bhagavatam and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu say that this is the highest and most laudable place for us to live. There the Supreme Lord Krishna and the gopis are living in the forest. There we find no grandeur or big buildings, but if we have a true eye for grandeur, we will see it in Vrindavan. From an impartial judgment of the facts, their position is very great, but through humility, they have apparently descended to our level. It is a very sweet and very beautiful form of life that we find in Vrindavan. And Mahaprabhu came to show that to us through Srimad Bhagavatam. Krishna is the Lord of that land, and the cows, hills, forest, and Jamuna River are all creating a favorable environment there. So Mahaprabhu took sannyas to teach us, to take us up and make us the permanent inhabitants of that place. He says that actually our real self lives in that plane, but unfortunately our consciousness has become focused outside. Now we are captured by the mundane aspect of this creation and think that we are suffering. But this is all illusion. We must return back to Godhead, back to home. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, your home is a beautiful land. You must try for that. Why are you always troubled with the horrors of war, epidemic, earthquake, undesirable disease, stealing, dacoiting, and fighting with so many neighbors? At the bottom of all this is the fact that you have identified yourself with this material world and this body of flesh and blood. You have to retrace your path and go back to your home. That is what is necessary. Our homeland is such a lovely and beautiful and divine place. Mahaprabhu Sannyas is all for us, and it is for the purpose of taking us back home, where we can have home comforts, home sweetness. If we have any home consciousness with him, then we must appreciate such a proposal. Home, sweet home. Welcome, Nazar, Anantashesh, Krishna Chaitanya, have all joined. Dandavat. 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 Wow. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, right? He said he doesn't recognize any famine, right? Other than the famine of Harikatha. So this is the movement of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Mahaprabhu of our Guru Varga. Ramananda Prabhu, yes, Prabhu, you have your hand raised. Oh, Prabhu, did you want to say something?
No, I have a question, inquiry. Yeah, thanks for explaining that. But how to keep that hankering, how to keep the lolium? Yeah, I'm always struggling. I was lucky yesterday. I went to Soka. It took me an hour and a half, but I have to stay all the way on my toes. You have to push through all the mountains, traffic. But luckily, I made it. But when I come back, then I forget because so much pressure, external pressure. The DTs are beautiful, have a nice program, only few devotees. Jagannath Mishra's Anand Mahotsav, so it was a nice program. So, I don't know, by Gurudev's mercy, I went there, I just made it. It's just, yeah.
Yes, we're forgetful souls, aren't we?
Yeah, always. So many experience pushing.
Yes. We are very forgetful. But sometimes we are searching for Krishna, right? We have these two books from Srila Sridhar Maharaj, The Search for Sri Krishna, Reality, the Beautiful. But we are very fortunate because there's another side to that too. There's also loving search for the lost servant. So sometimes we may be actively in that search for Sri Krishna. And there may be other moments where we're not feeling that lullium, as you said, right? That hunger. Then we can pray, oh Krishna, please, you pull me in, please include me on your loving search for your lost servant. Please include me on the list. Please include me. The material environment is very strong, and it's natural that we will become influenced by that, right, to greater or lesser degree at different times or different moments, right? But there are many ways that we are trying to approach this, right? I think the most important thing is that we try to keep some association, right? Not just what I think, but that's what our gurus tell us, right? That we keep some association in some form through the books, right? And now we're very fortunate, thanks to modern technology, we can even meet online like this, Then in different ways, we can try to keep some association, and then also some discipline is also required, right? Because we don't always feel the inspiration. We may not always feel the inspiration to go and do some seva or have some sadhu sangha or whatever it may be, right? Or chant, but then that is where our regular sadhana comes in, that we have to keep that discipline. Sometimes we have to beat our heads, right? Saraswati Thakur says, beat our minds with the shoe, right? Sometimes we have to do that. And someone may say this sounds extreme, but actually, even in the mundane world, this is for someone who wants to be really successful, that's how they have to live, right? It's interesting, if you look at like how some of these like big successful CEOs live, they're up at 5 a.m., 4 a.m., right? Doing their morning run or whatever it may be, right? They're serious, right? They're like successful dancers or musicians, like they're athletes. Athletes are one of the most difficult, right? Very strict diet, right? So it is, do we think, we can get off so easily? We have to put in our effort. We have to put in our effort. And sometimes we will feel the inspiration and sometimes we won't, but we have no other path, right? We know there's no other purpose to our lives. But if we have to say one thing, then I think sadhu sangha, to keep association, that will keep the flame alive, right? Sadhu sangha Krishna nam ei matra chai. This is Jagadananda Pandit's expression that's quoted by our gurus. Samsar jinitar kon vastu nai. That there are only these two things I want. Sadhu sangha, association with the devotees, and the holy name, right? And he says, then there's no other way to conquer over material existence. So if we really had to boil it down, our whole practice in a really condensed way, we can say these two things, right? To association and the holy name, right? They are our two main lifelines. But I know you're a very steady and very inspired devotee, Prabhu. So I cannot tell you anything.
No.
Only continue.
You are keeping us alive. You are giving so much knowledge. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
And as I was saying earlier, right, yes, maybe the vast majority of moments in our lives we're not feeling Krishna, right? There are those precious, rare moments where we feel some touch of Krishna. And then the rest of our lives, we are aspiring for that, or we're remembering that, or we're drawing upon that as our life sustenance, right? We're keeping a little pot with those precious drops of nectar that we've collected from the words of our gurus, from precious moments of experience, from rare moments of darshan. We're keeping a little pot in our heart, and we've collected all these precious drops, right? And we're living on that day by day, right? And for the enlightened soul, they're swimming in that. They're swimming in that. What is that? Prapana Jivanamrita, the life nectar of the surrendered souls. They're living on that. They're swimming in that. We have some tiny little pot with a few drops, right? And that's keeping us going, right? And we're drawing on that day. We're like in the desert, right? Someone in the desert has a pouch of water. Like, how precious is that? How precious is that little pouch of water? And very rarely then they may come across an oasis, right? In some very rare, precious moment, they may come across an oasis. And so we also may experience that at some times in our life. We found an oasis, whether it's in a community or in even one Vaishnava, or in one way or another, we may feel that, right? Or some touch of divinity has come to us. So we're travelers, right? We are travelers, and it's a long journey. It's an arduous, difficult journey. But we've packed some fortification, right? We've packed our some bottles of water and some protein bars. We've packed something to keep us going, right? But it's not going to be easy. But we didn't come for that, right? We didn't come for it to be easy. So we're trying to stoke the flames, right? Srila Maharshi has that beautiful expression, not to keep a feeble fire, right? Our gurus have lit a fire of Krishna consciousness in our heart. And he says not to keep a feeble fire. And sometimes it may be a little feeble, but at least we will keep it burning, right? At least we will keep it burning. And other times the fire may burn very bright, very gloriously. But at least we won't let the fire go out, right? We are trying to keep it, stoking those flames and feeding the fire in one way or another, day by day. So Vasni, did you want to say anything?
No, I don't have anything to say. It's just, yeah, whatever you said is very true. That's, yeah, we have to somehow, with the association and the books, we have to keep it going. Yeah.
What was your Gaura Purnima meditation?
Well, we had a very simple program here, and it's very Pranashis was here, and then we had many could not come for a weekday, and also, and others. I think there were Tungarasa and Gayatri joined online, so we had some reading and yeah, beautiful to remember that we were remembering how it was only like only a few hundred years ago. It was not such like a long time, like thousands of years ago. It was just only a few hundred years, and how it was, that it is so clearly, presented to us, whatever. So we were remembering that, actually.
Yeah, that wave is still very potent, right? And it's really not so far, as you said.
Yeah. And to remember that it's very hard to give this, the Lord was here and we could see the places where he was there and all that. It was like, hard to conceive, really, to, don't know what's the word, but it's, very hard to conceive that the
And
Lord
you were
was here.
just in Puri also. You're just coming from Puri, which is such an important place for Mahaprabhu's pastimes.
Yes, yeah, that was really true, yeah. Very, remembering that the Lord was dead in, the Puri, he was in this place, in the very, very place he was there. It was hard to, this is hard to conceive this kind of things. It's really,
Yes.
Yeah.
There were so many eyewitnesses.
Yeah. And they have given more clear, the understanding. It's very, it is very clearly given, everything presented. Actually, Pranashis was telling, oh, this is very like, the time where, like in England, or wherever it was, Henry VIII, this is the time where he was there, like very clear history is there, So we believe those kind of the history in 100 years, that was, the history we believe. So this is actually not something very far, and that, this is very clearly given. Tungarasa has given that passage of that what I was, in Adokshaja. Maybe that is what I was.
Oh, is it in our chat here?
Was it, did he? Maybe she put it here in my WhatsApp page. Yes, Tungaras, this is what, I was looking for, probably. Yeah.
Okay, do you want to read that, Didi?
Me or Tungarasa? I don't know.
Oh, yes, either. Maybe she's working though, I'm not sure.
Yeah. I think this is probably what I was thinking about. Yeah, thank you, Tangraj. So there is actually, in this way, we can understand the position of Pratyaksha Gyan, direct sensory knowledge, and Paroksha Gyan. So Pratyaksha is by our own direct experience, and Paroksha is gathered from others. Above these types of knowledge is Aparoksha Gyan, indistinct knowledge of consciousness. We cannot clearly describe that type of knowledge, though we can connect with it through scriptural advice. Right, okay. Then from beyond that plane of hazy consciousness comes transcendental knowledge, Adokshaja Gyan. So this is what this is also is given by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has given a definition of Adokshaja knowledge. Yeah, this is, you read that actually already. The adaha kritam mati krantam akshajam indriyajam jnanam yena saha adokshaja. Knowledge that exists beyond the reach of our senses, our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, touch, and mind, that can forcibly knock down and cross over our worldly knowledge is adokshaja knowledge. Yeah, it is not very, the aparoksha gyan is like, it is not very clear, right? It's like something.
Well, see, I guess in a simple way we could say it's beyond, because the pratyaksha and paroksha is dealing with direct sensory perception, but then
Yeah.
aparoksha is beyond the senses. It's some hazy consciousness, but it's still not the pure spiritual plane, right? Some in-between type of phase, it seems like. But yeah, it's a little tricky to understand that. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that, Chandarasa, and thank you for sharing that, Suvasini Didi. Very nice to
Thank you.
hear your thoughts and about your program.
Thank you. Thank you for your wonderful presentations all the time.
Oh, by the grace of Guru and Vaishnava. And I'm so grateful for all of your association. Does anyone want to add any final thoughts before we close for today? Should we end there? So a belated Gaura Purnima. I was actually thinking to go through these verses. Maybe we can do that next week. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, there are these 3 important verses, right, where Kaviraj Goswami is describing the nature of Mahaprabhu and his appearance, and I was thinking maybe we could go through those together. But maybe we'll do that next week. We didn't get there today. Okay, well, again, my gratitude for all of your good company. Wish you joyful week ahead and look forward to next time. Jai Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Avirbhav ki Jai. Jai Shri Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj ki Jai.
Jai.
Shri Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj ki Jai. Shri Rupa Guru Varga ki Jai. All the assembled devotees, sincere seekers ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki Jai. Jai Gaur Premanande. Haribo. Okay, see you all next time.
Devi Dasi ki
And
jai. All the
Jai.
devotees.
Jai.